All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar for June 2026. My name is Brian Brinkman. I serve as the Assistant Director of Recruitment and Advising for the Jake Job Center for Entrepreneurship. If you are interested in going back to school, you have most likely spoken with myself, and I'm very happy and very excited here to be joined by our program chair, MP. We are going to chat today about the MS in Entrepreneurship program, share some insights into the program from a success standpoint, talk through why this program could be beneficial for you as a student, and then potentially answer some questions here at the end. But I'm very excited to talk with you, MP. How are you doing here today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Brian. Never better.
Never better. Wednesday, midsummer. We're in a good spot right now, aren't we?
Yes, this
Good.
is amazing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk here a little bit about the program. I wanted to get your thoughts just as we get started here. Why, in your thoughts, a student who is considering the next phase of their career, be it additional work experience, be it additional education experience, why should a student consider going back to school for an MS in entrepreneurship, in your opinion?
Okay. So I'm going to answer this a little differently from what everyone typically expects. The typical answer is, go back to school because if you get an education, then you can get a great job in some company and you can progress in your career, right? But what is happening lately is that higher education is slowly losing its in its status
Yeah,
as a place where people can go get an education and get a job. So AI is eroding into higher education. You can get a lot of information from sources other than school. And so the value of school, particularly higher education, well, when I say higher education, I mean traditional higher education, which
yeah,
is an MBA degree, for example, is getting more diluted. So the value is not quite as much as, say, 30 years ago when I joined CU Denver.
sure.
And a good example would be the jobs people get after the MBA. 30 years ago, uh, our MBA students used to fly off CU Denver and get great jobs even
Yeah,
before they graduate. But now we are finding that MBA students and MS students typically are struggling. Uh, and one of the main reasons is alternative mechanisms of learning like AI. But AI cannot do entrepreneurship education because entrepreneurship education is both academic and experiential.
right.
AI cannot sort of, introduce you to a mentor. AI cannot give you practice, allow you to fail in an environment that's nurturing and helpful, right? Where the consequences are very low. So entrepreneurship education, which is increasingly experiential in nature, cannot be replicated by AI and the new technologies. And in
Yeah,
fact, I mean, Brian, I know we've been talking about this in the past, that young people are less adept at interpersonal communication, right? And that's becoming even more important. And that's why entrepreneurship education is so relevant in
Mm.
today's high-tech age because it's experiential in nature. Um,
Yeah, that experience is something, like you're saying, there's more opportunities for non-traditional education nowadays, and the cost of education rising, and what are the rewards you get is a legitimate question that people have.
yeah,
But that experience that you're talking about, where we can kind of guide you through this process, but also allow you to experience it yourself, is so essential.
yes. And I'm sure you're going to ask more questions about costs,
Yeah,
but when we do that, it's really important to also mention how we go out of our way to reduce costs for our students. And that's, I think, an important other reason to do an MS in entrepreneurship because it's a lot cheaper than doing a traditional MBA. So,
Yeah, and we can talk about that because I think, the differentiation, you've mentioned the NBA a few times. That is something that um, probably our largest competitor is an MBA program. Students who come to our program consider an MBA or an MS in entrepreneurship. Let's
Mhm.
talk first just from a content standpoint, and then we can talk a bit about the cost differentiation. But from a content standpoint, what would you see if you're a student right now weighing your options and you say, I know I want to go back to school, I want the advanced degree, I see the value there. Should I
Mhm.
do an entrepreneurship degree or should I do an MBA? From a content standpoint, what would be your advice for a student?
From a content perspective, I think the MBA delves a lot into business theory,
Mm,
and there's much less networking. There's much less mentorship. There's much less, uh, participating in competitions or getting funding from the MBA program. So it's basically theoretical education. The other issue with the MBA is that the MBA is a very long degree. And the reason it's so expensive is because there are 45 credit hours to get a degree, which is 15 courses. In the era of AI, we don't need 15 course degrees. In my view, they're way too long.
mhm, mhm.
So the MS in entrepreneurship is a 10 course degree, which is much shorter. Uh, the other thing is the MBA is generally extremely expensive. Even if you look at MBAs at CU Denver, we are talking minimum 60, $70,000. If you do a 1 year MBA or the executive MBA is over 100 now, I think. But the cost of the MBA degree versus the value you get has eroded over time. Now, and that's the main reason that I came up with the idea, if you remember, of the MS in entrepreneurship degree, because we wanted to almost do the opposite of what the MBA program was doing.
Yeah,
You know, we wanted good academic education, but we also want to do what's really important, which is the connections,
right,
forming connections, uh, and giving them scholarships, which is something we can do because we are externally funded as well, which the MBA programs typically can't do.
right.
So it's inexpensive. It's also far more practical in today's world to actually have networks, to have experience, to actually try to do it. And if you have to fail, fail in an environment where there are no consequences, where it's a learning environment. So the focus on all these events that we do and the networking and the mentorship is what education should be. So
Hmm, hmm.
now, one of the interesting things, Brian, that which a lot of people ask me this, oh, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. Should I do an MS in entrepreneurship? I should go for the MBA. But more than 50% of our students who do an MS entrepreneurship degree never have an intention of starting a business. They
Right.
want to get a degree and use the experiential connections and everything else that that degree offers to get a job in a large company. And it's interesting that Googles and the Amazons of the world seek out entrepreneurship graduates more readily now than they used to 5 years ago because they know
Yeah.
that those are the skills they want in the organization as well. So, so you're right. I mean, MBA is our competition because many of our students go to big companies. But we also have the entrepreneurial track if you want to start your own business. And the mentorship from great entrepreneurs in Colorado's that we provide is something no other program provides. And that's so critical to success, having a network of trusted people when you actually launch your own entrepreneurial idea.
I think the network and also that focus on a small business and experience within a small business is so essential because a lot of students, especially at a younger age, really value the Fortune 500s, the large corporations where there's embedded there's a status to working there, but there's also a process oriented nature of working within an organization like that. The systems are already in place. The benefits, however, of what we provide from a small business standpoint is you're going to get all this experience across various departments. You may work in the marketing department of a small business, but you're going to have access to operations. You're going to have access to the impact of HR. You're going to have access to the finances of the company. Those are all going to be things you will be thinking about on a day-to-day basis as you progress within that
Yeah.
organization. Um, and you get that with an MS entrepreneurship. It's those connections you're talking about are to small business companies where you can speak a language
Mm.
that can help you then in a larger organization because you will already have had access and oversight to a number of departments that you just simply don't get if your entry level is a larger company.
That's such a good point, Brian, because what happens typically is let's take another MS degree, for example, MS in marketing. I have a
Sure.
PhD in marketing. Uh, the graduates from an MS marketing degree go and get jobs in organizations typically in their marketing department. But what the big problem with large organizations is, or even mid-sized organizations, is that the marketing person doesn't know anything about finance. The
Right.
finance person doesn't know anything about marketing or very little, and they typically think they're more special than the other people, right? They don't appreciate the organization from the perspective of the other department members. So
Right.
what entrepreneurship education, like a mini MBA, helps the student is to appreciate all aspects of business. And getting an internship or starting your own business or getting a job with an entrepreneurial company can't afford to have you do only marketing, for
Right.
example. You got to do marketing, you got to know the other stuff as well. And that actually helps you become sharper in your thinking. And it helps you become, as you said, a far more valuable asset even to a large organization because you can think out of the box. You have an entrepreneurial mindset and you are aware of the realities of different fields within the company. So that's a really good point.
And that's something that we're trying to do here for all students is provide that level of exposure, that level of experience, that level of feedback that is essential to be thinking about all aspects of a company. Um, Let's talk a little bit about Denver in and of itself. So we are both based here in Denver. I think we both benefit greatly from a mental health standpoint from all of the sunshine that we receive, the access to, for you, you get to golf 12 months a year, which is amazing. For me, I get to hike, I get to ski, I get to
Yeah.
kayak. There's so much to do. Plus, the city in and of itself is a really fun, growing, young, vibrant place to be. What do you think from an entrepreneurship standpoint? What makes Denver really unique? And why would you encourage students from around the country, around the world, really, to come to Denver to experience our MS in Entrepreneurship program?
Yeah. So you're right. Denver is by far in the top five cities, most desirable places,
Yeah,
in my mind, in the world, not just in the US.
yeah,
Where else can you have this educated, young, vibrant community that you said? But look west, and you have beautiful mountains.
yep,
You can go climbing a 14er. I wouldn't recommend it at my age, uh, but you can go hiking, you can go canoeing, you can go horseback riding. Just incredible fun.
yeah.
And so that's really a very big selling point of coming to Denver. But a lot of people don't understand Denver is one of the most connected cities. DIA, you can Google this, Denver International Airport is in the top 10 in the world in
Yeah.
terms of number of flights and connections and so on. And so Denver is a hugely connected city. So you can go globally anywhere. There are multiple flights to London, Germany, Japan, everywhere, which is really important, especially if you're an international student coming to Denver. But the third and most important reason is that in the past 30 years, and I've been at CU Denver for 30 years, I've seen Denver grow tremendously as one of the most dynamic entrepreneurial ecosystems in the country. Denver Startup Week, which is a week in September where, startup communities come together, is the largest in the world.
Yeah,
Okay. That gives you an example. It's
absolutely.
an example of how dynamic Denver is. Denver is also a place now where there are some very great entrepreneurs and very successful business leaders. Okay. So it's a heavily entrepreneurial community with some, incredibly successful people. The one thing that we and the Entrepreneurship Center have done is we have successfully connected with a lot of these great entrepreneurs. And they love to give back to students and help students out. So we actually get mentorship and experiential support from these entrepreneurs at a level that you could never imagine
Right.
anywhere else, just because Denver is such a dynamic ecosystem. It's also a great place to start a business because of the support you're going to get from other entrepreneurs in the community, because it's a very inclusive environment for entrepreneurs. And of course, if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to join a company, all the big tech companies are moving to Denver in the Denver Boulder area. You got the Amazons, the Googles, everyone's moving here. So that's the other advantage. It's becoming a true Silicon Valley, and it's maybe only second or third to Silicon Valley in the US, but it's a phenomenal entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Yeah, the connections that we can make and the amount of people that want to come here for the quality of life, it's a really, really great point. We have that ability to essentially mimic what you would get in a place like Silicon Valley, but in a slightly I think that there's more upside here right now. There's less that's been discovered on an international basis, but there are so many people here that the potential for face-to-face interactions with really successful entrepreneurs is raised because there isn't as much of a spotlight here, which is a unique spot to be in at a
True.
time like this.
True. And so many people are moving from Silicon Valley to Denver because Silicon Valley is unaffordable.
Right,
Unless
right.
unless you're the CEO of companies making billions of dollars, I mean, it's very hard to, afford a nice place. I mean, millions of dollars there, to have a decent home.
Well, and
Uh,
as a result, we're seeing regional hubs of tech companies coming here to Denver. So
yeah,
there's access to those type of companies, plus, like
correct.
we've been talking about, a lot of growth opportunities. Um, with that those connections that we can make, those opportunities for networking, what comes next for a young entrepreneur? And this is something for all students who are viewing this really kind of one of the most critical, if not the most critical aspect of an entrepreneurship program is the feedback opportunity. You are not
Yes.
just taking classes from us. You are not just receiving letter grades. To get the most out of this program, you have to be essentially pursuing an idea, although that's not a requirement, but it is where you get a lot out of this program, pursuing a business concept, pitching that business concept to entrepreneurs and receiving feedback.
Mhm.
And that happens through events, through networking, through you having a mentorship opportunity as a young student. Can you talk to the essence of feedback for a young entrepreneur? Why is this important? Why is it important that you take feedback seriously and you apply it throughout your program?
Well, I think feedback is a critical component for any entrepreneur, not just one starting out. Okay. Because the environment is changing, the realities of businesses are changing rapidly. Okay. That's number one. You have to be on top of what changes are happening. Number two, most people, including myself, when I come up with an idea, I think it's the greatest idea, in the universe. And it's really important to talk to entrepreneurs who have failed before they have succeeded. because I think what they do, and most great entrepreneurs have failed several times before they've succeeded. They've
Right.
just failed, they have known how to fail, so they haven't lost their shirt while failing. Um, so, the advice and the mentorship that we can get, the feedback that we get from these entrepreneurs and from experienced people in the center, such as yourself, who've seen it all, is really important because in most cases, most early stage ideas have flaws, and it's really important to get feedback from multiple people to identify those flaws. And most flaws can be corrected, right? So if you tweak your idea and you pivot in a certain way, you can actually come up with a good idea,
Right.
which has viability and a probability of success, right? The other point that you made, so that's why that network is so important, because it's not just learning from me or from you or from the faculty. You're also learning from these other entrepreneurs, and it's really critical to get their feedback.
Hmm.
And it's really important, and this is a very important point, I think. It's really important to be open to the fact that you're wrong and that your idea may not be the most amazing idea, because failing quickly or dropping the idea if it's not a good idea early saves you a whole bunch of time. And in the process of failing or giving up on your, dear idea, you will come up with strategies to come up with a much better idea because you're not going to repeat the mistakes you made, with your first one. So that iterative process, I think, is critical to eventual success of an entrepreneur. And that you can't get that unless you have really great feedback coming from really good mentors who are successful entrepreneurs.
And that process of learning that this idea may not be the idea, but may be a part of the idea is
Correct.
something you are going to learn one way or the other. And I think to your point,
Mhm.
our program, the benefits of it is it allows you to do that both in real time and in a simulation. You're not investing thousands and thousands of dollars to put forth an idea that doesn't ultimately have a chance to succeed, but you're putting an investment towards education while also testing that idea. So you are not putting it out on the market and developing a reputation of a failed idea. The process you're going through right now is learning how to work through that, right?
Yeah, and the education is helping you think through the idea. That's the point. You come up with an idea, the education is helping you say, maybe this is not the greatest idea, or maybe it is. Maybe
Right.
now I have positive reinforcement for my idea. And maybe if I can think bigger, perhaps I can make it even bigger.
Yeah.
So the education and the mentorship really helps you dispassionately decide whether your idea is great or not. One really interesting story, by the way, one of our students, a few years ago, went interviewed at one of the top tech companies because they said, I'm going to wait before I start my own business, but I want to get some experience. So I'm going to go to
Yeah.
one of these entrepreneurial companies. And Google at that time, I think it was Google, and Google at that time considered itself to be 1,001 startups, right? That's how they sort of thought about themselves. And the first question this person asked the student is, if you went through an entrepreneurial program, this person did an MBA with a specialization in entrepreneurship. What was the idea you came up with? And tell me what you thought of the idea, at the end. So this guy said, I came up with this idea and I realized it was a horrible idea.
Mm.
Okay, got to be honest with you. So the guy said, oh, tell me why it was a bad idea. And the student went through, I went, this class helped me figure this out. Then I realized, two-thirds of the way that this wasn't a very good idea.
Hmm.
Then I came up with another idea. Then I realized very quickly that was an even worse idea than the first one.
Hmm.
And then I was coming up with ideas that I thought were better. But this made me think I should wait 2 years or 3 years before launching, and really go through ensuring that the idea is really good or the concept is good. That guy got hired at Google because that's the type of employee they want to see, right? Because everyone's looking for the entrepreneurial mindset,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
The
So,
ability to communicate failure, the why,
yeah.
is not necessarily a scarlet letter. Everybody fails in this industry, to your point. Even the most successful entrepreneurs have put forth ideas that the market has said, we're not interested. And they've had to evaluate and they've had to reset. And so you're absolutely right. Being able to communicate that showcases that learning process as well. So even if this idea doesn't take off, there's benefits here.
And it teaches self-reflection. So a good
Totally.
example would be Joel Apple.
Yeah.
He's the guy who invented OxyClean, Orange Glow. I mean, super successful entrepreneur. He's come up with this new product called Rock the Shot, which is for GLP-1. I think you had a sample of that, Brian. So when he started with Rock the Shot, he came up with some prefabricated idea that he had. Okay, but take some whey protein, add some collagen and a few other things, and we'll come up with this. And then he realized that that was almost guaranteed to fail.
Mm.
So he got feedback from customers. He knew it was going to fail. He pivoted. He made changes to the product, improved it, made it more relevant to the market. He realized that the demographics of the market was very unique. So he actually could isolate the demographic and the marketing to that market and design the product for that market. So here is a great entrepreneur with literally hundreds of successful ideas. But his new idea, he realized very quickly it was failing and he pivoted quickly. So even he makes mistakes. But the difference, I think, is that he realizes quickly that my idea is not that good and that he is able to pivot very quickly. Those, and that's what entrepreneurial education gives you.
It's an endless ego check because you would think that once you've cracked the good idea and you make your money and then you're able to exit strong, that every other idea is going to be great. But it's a really good notion. It's a good point that students here should be taking into account. Even if you've come up with the best idea, that does not necessarily mean the next one is going to work out just the same.
Yeah, be
Um,
careful with the next one.
Right. Which leads me to a follow-up question of, from your standpoint as a long-term faculty member, program chair, student advisor, how do you go about advising students when you realize as an advisor of sorts to them, this idea is not going to be the one? What are the things for students to keep in mind from a feedback standpoint so that they don't necessarily take it personally, but they take it proactively to improve?
So the way so first of all, when students come to me and if I think their idea is not very good, for example, I think it's really important for me to tell them directly, give them that feedback as early as possible, because
Yeah.
what the big mistake we can make is to say, That's, that's a great idea. Oh, maybe you should work on it in this way. Maybe you should. I think it's really important to tell them, hey, I don't think it's a very good idea. But then maybe I'm wrong. So go and talk to two or three other people.
Yeah.
But there's no terrible idea because every idea can typically be tweaked and you can pivot and you can because there's something that made you come up with the idea in the first place. So you
Sure.
thought about differentiation, you thought about why the idea would be good. So most ideas are not terrible because there is some logic to it. And so they can be tweaked appropriately. They can be modified without losing the core germ that resulted in the idea. And so in a lot of ways, I think it's really important to tell them, hey, this is going to be a hard battle for you this way, but how about pivoting? How about this target market? I think you've got the target market wrong. And that is a piece of feedback. And, it just happened yesterday that I was giving feedback to one of our MS entrepreneurship students. And I told him directly, I think you'll have a lot more opportunity in the senior market as opposed to the market you're targeting now, which is HOAs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And then I told him, maybe I'm wrong, so go and get feedback from other people.
yeah.
So,
I think that's the thing is finding, to your point, the inspiration means that there's something in there. None of the feedback is to negate your own creativity, your own opportunity
no,
as a student.
no. Our goal is to make you successful,
Yes.
right? And if we are on your team, we are in there together, right? And we are dedicated to doing our best to help you come up with a great idea and make you very successful.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think in all sincerity, we are not helping you if we are not giving you the best feedback possible and the best feedback possible as early as possible, right? So that you have an opportunity in the program to make changes.
Yeah, because most students typically take about a year to 2.5 years to complete the program. And within that time frame, there's a lot of time to tweak ideas and work
Yeah,
within ideas and take specific
exactly.
classes and come to events and get repeat chances at competitions and whatnot. Speaking of classes, is there a class that you particularly recommend that students take who are thinking I want to start a business and they need a crash course in how to get feedback, how to develop a network and mentorship relationships and get ready for their idea to be pushed forward? Are there any classes that come to mind for you?
Well, I think I wouldn't say there's any one class. I would say that, and one of the one of the hallmarks of our program, if I may say so, is that it's fully customizable. So
Right.
I think that the most important thing is before you get started, that you should come and talk to you, Brian, or one of us, so that we can mold the classes that will be most appropriate to you based on your background and based on what you already know. Good example would be one of our MS entrepreneurship students was he retired during the COVID. He was one of the mass resignations during COVID, and he was a senior finance director in a company.
Yep.
And he wanted to start a business. So he came to our entrepreneurship program. And to have him do Finance 101 doesn't make any sense because he could teach that
Right.
class, right? But he knew very little about marketing. He knew very little about other courses. So I think it's really important to have the fundamentals in order before you go on to say, and I would say the business plan class is very important. And the class before that, which is on idea generation, is very important. But when you go to these classes, if you don't know Finance 101, then it becomes very hard for you to follow along, right? Because there is a fundamental assumption that you have the business basics when you
Right.
go to, say, a more advanced class. So I would say everyone's different, but plug in the holes in your business basics by taking the appropriate classes that complement your existing knowledge the most. And that is really so it's really important they come and talk to you
Yeah.
so that you can identify, oh, you don't need to take this, you don't need to prioritize that, take that class first.
Yeah.
Because the classes, to answer your question, the classes vary based on the individual. what would be the most useful.
Right, right. Yeah, and to your point, the customizable aspect, we essentially have two tracks, if you could think about it this way, where we have a track that is almost like capstone track of idea validation, business plan development,
Correct.
startup strategies, and then technology and how to utilize technology and software to best launch a lean business. But then outside of that, you mentioned a number of courses that are in kind of our foundational track. So finance, marketing, e-commerce, legal issues, operations, leadership. I could continue to go on, but the
Yeah.
point is those classes really fill in the gaps of where is your expertise lacking? Where are there skill gaps? And so we build out a schedule based on those to
Yeah.
then lead to what you're talking about. Okay, now it's time. Let's validate your idea. Let's make sure that it's doable. If it is, let's build out a business plan and let's get you ready for launch. And if you can follow those steps, that allows you to pick up a lot of informational, foundational information, but then also launch your business. Um, we also have, in addition to all of our classes that are fully customizable, both online, in person, and hybrid, we also have business pitch competitions. And every spring we have the Climb, which is our gem of a competition. Students work through the entire year, receive feedback and insights from both professors, advisors, and entrepreneurs and investors in our larger community. And then six students, after submitting business plan proposals and pitch proposals, will be selected to compete on our final Climb event in late April. What is your advice if I'm a student who's either thinking about this program or who has just started this program? What is your advice for any student who wants to participate in a business pitch competition? How do they get the most out of it?
Well, I think it makes sense that you have having an idea that's not well developed may be a little premature to actually apply for the competition because the
Sure.
competition assumes that the idea is viable and you're competing with other ideas, right? So it's the best idea, hopefully, that's selected to win the competition, and then the second best idea comes number two. Applying for the climb is something everybody should do,
Yeah.
in my view. And applying for the climb is not primarily to win an award, I would say. Applying to the climb is because the very application helps you narrow down your thinking. For
Right.
example, one of the things in the climb is you have to come with a 90-second pitch video. Most entrepreneurs who love their ideas like to talk endlessly about the idea, right? So the very fact that you've got to voluntarily get rid of all the lovely things you wanted to say and condense it to 90 seconds helps you prioritize. Similarly, with the application process of the condensed business plan, which means that, again, it's a really short document. There's no time for fluff and nonsense there. So you have to really prioritize and make it small. And then all students get feedback, both from the online judges, which is the first stage, and then from individuals like us. I mean, all the students can come to me and ask me for feedback, and I'll give them the feedback, right?
Yeah.
So, um, so I think I would encourage everybody to apply, but also not to think of it from the perspective of winning or getting a prize, but from the perspective of feedback.
Yeah.
And if you look back in time, we've had lots of great successes who never won the climb. And a good
Hmm.
example, or who never even reached the finals. For example, Karen Hertz from Holiday never reached the finals of the climb. Or there's another great marketing brand called Demoto Brands, never reached the finals of the climb. But the feedback process actually really helped them launch successful businesses. And to, you know, just to elaborate, Karen Hertz, who applied for the climb, did not reach the final, has the largest gluten-free brewery in the country. Okay. So the climb works, but I think the way it works is not necessarily to think about it as an opportunity to get money or being disappointed if one doesn't win, but the opportunities to get that feedback and help um, think about your concept in a much more succinct way, which is what you
Yeah.
need.
That's a really great point. I mean, the competition itself, it's very exciting. The winning aspect, I've spoken with many of our winners. You've spoken with many of our winners. They're accomplished. They did a lot of great work to win. But, and I would even think that they would argue this, the winning was not the most important thing for them. The process of hearing someone's non-biased say, I like this about your idea, but I want you to examine this. And then another person back that up, but say, I also want you to examine this part of it. Those aspects of the business pitch competition allow a student the opportunity to really reflect, like you've been saying, really look critically at their idea, not think of it as this kind of romantic notion of what the next phase of your life could be. It's all a process. It's day to day. It's like
Right.
anything. And getting that feedback allows you to take that perspective and really understand I got a lot more work to do. And these are the people I can reach out to help me do that.
Yeah. And the climb also, there are lots of events that lead up to the climb.
Yes.
So the climb is not one event. There are many things that help students as they think about their idea. And during these climb events, they meet a lot of mentors that they can individually connect with as well. And so the process is also an inclusive process where entrepreneurs in the community are part of the process of giving feedback to the students before they apply. And then my favorite event is not the pitch night, it's the pitch market.
Yeah.
The, where they go around and they've got what, 90 seconds to communicate their idea to potential investors, right? And then they get real feedback as to how
Yep.
much of kind of mock money they won. And that gives them an indication of where they need to improve. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the most phenomenal, in my view, that's incredibly useful feedback that they get.
Yeah. I mean, that's essential. You are essentially putting yourself out there uh, in a really vulnerable way, which is all a part of this. Every entrepreneur that you speak with, we talked about Joel Apple, who has been extremely successful, but then has come up with ideas that he's had to pivot from. That vulnerability doesn't go away just with one success. And so if you haven't even had that, that vulnerability is really something to become
In
used to.
fact, it's greater because then they
Right.
realize that their success was partly hard work, partly luck.
Right.
So, that self-reflection becomes important.
Yeah.
In the pitch market, it was so interesting that there was this one uh, young lady from the one-year MBA program who was participating, and she thought that she was a great communicator,
Yep.
so that she could go and convince anyone she had a great idea. After speaking to four mock investors, and there were about 15, I would say, in that room. Okay. She said, "This is so hard." And then she said, "Oh, I need to take a break." I said, "No, keep going. Okay,
Now
you
is when
take a
you
break at
double
the end.
down.
You're not taking a
Yep.
break now, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she went to the next one, and then she went to the next one. There's a time and a place for everything. You want a break, you wait till the end, right? So,
Yeah.
there are little things that
Yeah.
the whole process reveals about your own communication style. In some way, it's really good to do that for all of us to realize, maybe I thought I was really good at this, and maybe I'm not. You know,
And you spoke to the notion of luck, and I think that the one thing I would add to that is all good ideas require you to be in the right place at the right time. Whether or not that's luck or that's just nailing the moment, it's kind of this ephemeral thing that you just have to be in the right place at the right time with the right idea, with the right execution, and that's all the more reason to kind of just keep going after every chance you get to speak with someone, to get feedback, to get insights, to test the idea. You can't do it enough because until you hit it and the idea clicks and the momentum takes over and now you have the right team around you and now you can build out this
Exactly.
idea,
Yeah.
it's all just another chance.
You have to give yourself the opportunity to be lucky,
Right,
and you
right,
have to do the hard work so that you can seize on opportunities,
right. That's a really good
right?
way to put it.
So,
Well, let me close then. For students who are considering going back to school, we are still accepting applications for our fall 2026 term through July 15th. I am more than happy to speak with any of you. You've received numerous emails from me. Please schedule a call with me to talk through the MS in Entrepreneurship program. We can chat about the application. We can chat about the program at large. Should you be admitted and decide to enroll, we will work together one on one to build out a successful degree plan. So, for any students considering going back to school, what are three pieces of advice that you would have for them to be successful in our program?
the first thing is come and talk to us. As you said, come and talk to you. And it's really important for you to be convinced that the program's right for you. So I think coming and talking to us first is really important. Second is we have an orientation program. It's really important to attend that because then you get to know what to do and what not to do as you go through the program. It's quite simple, but you'd be surprised as how many people don't do, are not familiar with that. And then you want to hit the ground running. And I think the orientation program gets you the opportunity to meet other students as well. Remember, when we talk about networking, we've been talking about networking with great entrepreneurs and so on. But it's a very possible and very likely that as you develop your idea, your team will consist of people you'll meet in that room. So it's really important to also network with all of us and all the other students as well. That's what I would recommend. And then ardently try to capitalize on the resources that we offer.
Yeah.
And then of course, do the fundamental classes that, identify where the holes are and plug those holes and, seize every opportunity. And there are so many opportunities. For example, the Rug Bridges Venture Fund. It's a student-run venture fund where we actually invest real money in businesses. I
Mhm.
mean, consider becoming part of that as a student so that you learn how investors think. So there are so many opportunities that we have,
Yeah.
both in fall and in spring. So I would encourage them not to miss out on any of them as well.
Yeah, it's like we've been saying the program, we try to meet you where you are from a um, class scheduling standpoint. Our goal is to make this as accessible as possible for your life. We realize many graduate level students in the 2020s are busy. You have families, you have jobs of your own. We want to make the program to accommodate from a scheduling standpoint with you. In addition, costs are rising everywhere, so we try to keep our costs as low as possible. Higher education is an investment. We want to make sure that you're all in a position where you are not feeling as though you are being nickel and dimed, being charged in an inflated rate. We want to make sure that this is affordable for you. But then to MP's point here, the events that we schedule, in addition to the classes, are tailored specifically to development, to networking, to putting yourself out there, to getting feedback. All of these really essential things to make sure that throughout the time you're in this program, you can review your idea, take a look at it from a critical angle, break it down, build it back up. And then when you graduate, you have that business plan, that network, and that momentum to take the next step forward.
And it's really important to come with an idea, even if you don't want to launch your own business, even if you want to join a company, because the process of coming up with the idea, vetting the idea, sharpens the mind. But I think you're totally right. Start by talking to us. and I think, Brian, you're the best resource. I'm also happy to talk to them if they would like. But talk to us, number one, and know about scholarships. This
Yeah.
is exactly why they should attend the orientation session because we do have scholarship, but the scholarship have rules. So you
Right.
got to apply by a certain date. You got to follow certain procedures. And it's really important for you to know those procedures. So I would say get all that information so that you don't leave an opportunity missing.
It's a great way to put it. It's a great way to put it. We have scholarships available and want to help save you guys money, additional money. So, MP, I want to thank you for your time here today, for your
My
thoughts, your
pleasure.
wisdom. For all students who are interested in coming, you'll have direct access to our program chair. He's a wealth of information. He's a great sounding board for ideas and will offer. Trust me, I know this personally. He will offer both praise and critical feedback, which helps to balance everything out. So it's
Well,
it's a good conversation to have.
and I'm here to help.
Yes,
I don't think I'm as smart as Brian. So I think Brian will be able to give you feedback about specific courses better than I can. But I will be happy to talk to you and help you as you think through the program, uh,
absolutely.
and also connect you with people.
Yes,
Right?
it's a
So
huge part of this. Well, thank you, MP. Thank you
my
for
pleasure.
everyone who's viewing this, and we hope to see you here in fall 2026.
Thank you, Brian, for the interview, and thank you to all the students who have been listening in. Feel free to write to me directly. I think my email address is on our website.
Yep,
So feel free to write to Brian or to me. And even if you're not 100% sure, but you're thinking about higher education and the pros and cons, just talk to us,
absolutely.
right? We're
That's what we're
happy
here
to
for.
talk to you even if you're hesitating.
Absolutely. That's what
So,
we're here for.
yeah. So, thank you,
We
Brian.
hope, thank you. We hope you all have a wonderful day. We will see you for the next webinar here in a couple weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye bye.